of the Byzantine Empire. Strangers from the East. Okay, so here's a story. The silk merchant clasped his hands beneath his big round belly, leaned back, and surveyed with satisfaction the remains of his meal. A few missed crumbs of bread and cheese, a drop or two of fragrant olive oil, he had failed to mop up. It was not the feast of an aristocrat. No, dishes of meat and garlic sauce, no heady wine. But he was not one to complain on a full stomach. Business had been brisk this season. God was good. From half under closed lids he idly watched the crowds of market goers passing by. The murmur of foreign tongues washed over him. On any given day, it was said, you could hear almost every language of the world on the streets of Constantinople. He had just about dozed off when two monks entered his stall. Reluctantly, he raised one eyelid far enough to give them an appraising glance. Thin, ragged, dusty from the road. Not a gold between them, he was certain. Surely they could have little interest in a precarious luxury item like silk. Perhaps they'd come to beg. "Good afternoon," he said. "I wish I could invite you to share my meal, but as you see, I just finished. Had I expected guests?" He waved his hands to show his deep regret. One must be courteous, if not sincere. "Thank you, we've eaten." Ah, hard to believe, but none of his concern. The merchant waited for the monks to move along so he could get back to the interrupted business of his nap. Inside, the older one leaned on his walking stick. The younger one used his walking stick to point at the bolts of fabric stacked around the stalls. "Nice cloth. Does it fetch a good price here in these parts?" The merchant fought to hide his irritation. "It's silk," he said, "from China, worth its weight in gold." The older monk smiled and nodded. "And the local silk? Is it as valuable?" "Local silk?" The merchant sighed at the boundless ignorance of these churchmen. "All silk comes from China," he explained. "No one outside that far-off land knows how the precious cloth is made. It is a closely guarded secret." Then curiosity overcame his annoyance. "You must be new to this city." "We just arrived today," the old man gestured vaguely, "from the east." Were they Armenians? The merchant wondered. Syrians? Perhaps even Persians, like himself. The merchant felt himself warming a bit toward the strangers. "Well, no matter. Wherever we come from, we're all Romans here." He pivoted to include the younger monk in his generous welcome. In an instant, warmth gave way to panic. "Stop!" Startled, the young man snatched his hand back from the bolt of purple silk. What's wrong?" "You mustn't touch that. Purple dyed silk is only for the emperor and empress." The merchant glanced around nervously. "If the imperial agents saw me selling it to foreigners, they'd have me flogged." The monk raised an eyebrow. "Foreigners? I thought we were all Romans here." But he backed away from the forbidden cloth. His companion shifted the conversation. "I have heard many fine things about the Emperor Justinian. A pious man, a powerful leader, a reformer." "True, true," the merchant nodded. "When I was a boy, the legal system was a jumble. So many laws. Some long outdated, some contradicting others. The courts were filled with corruption. And now? Now there is justice. The emperor appointed a commission to sort out all the ancient laws into a single system, clearly covering every aspect of modern life. Now we have the Justinian Code. Under the code, we all know where we stand." "And when you may be flogged?" the young monk added cheerfully. The merchant frowned. "I'm a law-abiding Christian. The emperor surely must hold you in high esteem," put in the older monk in soothing tones. He gestured toward the purple silk. What an honor to be chosen to clothe the royal family. Do you often visit the palace? A dark flush crept up the merchant's double chins. He had never set foot in the palace. In truth, the closest he had ever been to any of the royal family was when a minor servant of the Empress Theodora had stopped by to inspect his wares, and left without buying so much as a hand's width of silk. He avoided the question by replying, "The Emperor is most gracious." The old man smiled. "We look forward to an audience." "An audience? You intend to meet the Emperor Justinian?" The young monk nodded. "We think he will be very pleased with what we bring." The silk merchant struggled to contain his feelings. Arrogant beggars! How dare they? Constantinople was the center of the world. What could these two penniless monks imagine they might have to offer the all-powerful ruler of the Roman Empire? No longer sleepy, he pushed himself to his feet. "Come with me." With a few quick movements, he shut down his stall. A moment later, he was pushing through the crowded market, the two strangers hurrying behind. "Look there! Ivory from Africa and India. And there, exotic spices. Furs from Russia, jewelry, enamel, glassware, silver." The monks gazed around them with great interest. But the merchant hardly slowed down long enough to let them look. At the edge of the market, he swung to face them. "The finest goods in the entire world sail into our port," he said. "There is nothing you could bring the emperor that he does not already have, and far better." He folded his arms and waited for the monks to shrink with humility in the face of such splendor. But far from being abashed, the monks appeared amused. "Impressive indeed," said the elder. "But what we carry with us is not to be found anywhere in your market." The silk merchant scowled. Were they making fun of him? What could these ragged travelers possess that was not sold in the market stalls of the great city? Aha! He thought he understood their meaning, but he'd showed these monks their folly. The merchant led them through the streets, past the taverns and the public baths, past high walls carved with the names of wealthy families, past rickety wooden tenements home to the city's poorest. He even swiped past the Hippodrome, the giant stadium built by order of the emperor, where 40,000 gathered at a time to cheer the chariot races. At last he halted in front of a large marble building. Sweat dripped down his broad red face. "This," he announced, "is the Imperial University." "Wonderful," said the older monk, "but why have you brought us here?" "You say you bring the emperor gifts that cannot be found in our markets. I see you carry nothing with you but your cloaks and walking sticks. Your gift must be something that can't be seen or held, such as knowledge." The younger monk said, "Actually—" "But you are wrong," the merchant said triumphantly. "All the greatest Greek and Roman writings, philosophy, science, mathematics, are preserved in the libraries and schools of Constantinople. Everything worth knowing is already in the possession of the emperor." The older monk smiled. "I'm afraid you have misunderstood us. We do not pretend to be teachers or scholars." Puzzled, the silk merchant stared at the two strangers. What, then, could their gift be? What could they have that Emperor Justinian would want? "I know," he said at last, "but you have come too late." Without waiting for a reply, he caught each man by the sleeve and pulled them both through the streets. This time, when they arrived at their destination, he didn't have to tell the monks where he had brought them. The fantastic golden dome, the splendid columns, the walls covered in mosaics made of countless tiny bits of colored glass. All of Justinian's many ambitious and expensive architectural projects. The Church of Hagia Sophia was by far his greatest achievement. It was dazzling. It was divine. You see, the merchant said, the work is finished. The emperor has no need of your skills. The older monk pulled his gaze away from the breathtaking spectacle. Skills? We are not stonemasons or metal workers. Neither are we artists. The silk merchant was nearly beside himself. You have no skills, you have no knowledge, you carry nothing that is valuable, nothing to be bought with gold or silver. What is this invisible gift you bring? The young monk laughed. But we have all those things, he said, as he tapped his walking stick on the ground. The older monk smiled, for he knew that inside their hollow walking sticks he and his young companion carried something worth far more than its weight in gold, the eggs of a very special kind of worm, the silkworm, and the sprigs of a special plant that the silkworms feed upon. And inside their heads they carried the skills and knowledge they had learned on their travels through China, the secrets of making silk. "Now, if you will excuse us," said the older monk to the baffled merchant, "we are most eager to see the emperor." And Justinian himself had sent the two monks to China to obtain the secret of making silk, a secret the Chinese had guarded for centuries. The emperor soon had his workers raising silkworms and growing mulberry trees. China remained an important supplier of silk to the West, but by AD 600, the sale of silk brought more riches to the Byzantine Empire than any other product. And that's the end of the reading, pages 450 to 457.